you never.
So our goal today is to take our learning from yesterday when we were dividing up all of those hamburgers and talk about what is an algorithm or a strategy that we can use when we divide fractions. So a strategy that will work every time. So far you guys have a really good understanding of how to divide fractions with bar models. And so we're going to use that to help us understand a common denominator method. So there is more than one way to divide fractions. And today's examples are going to focus on a strategy called the common denominator method, which is what you guys did yesterday, but we're just going to formalize it today. So the first one we have is just an example that says explore the diagram to find the quotient. Hey guys, what is a quotient? You can just tell me. The answer to a division problem. It doesn't have to be fractions, but it's the answer to a division problem. So next time you see quotient, you'll know what you're looking for. So we have 1/2 divided by 1/4. In other words, we can think of how many sets of 1/4 are in 1/2. And when I see a division problem, that's often what I think to myself. Okay, so I want to know how many times does 1/4 go into 1/2? Yeah. Is your question? Yeah. I'll double check. Okay, we're good. We're recording. So down here we have a picture of 1/2. And we're asking how many sets of 1/4 are in 1/2. So how many times, guys, will 1/4 go into 1/2? You can just tell me. Two times. And we can see that from our diagram there. Okay, so we know that based on our pictures. So let's move this into our strategy so that we can just have another way to check our answer. So we have 1/2 divided by 1/4. Our first step is to find a common denominator. Crew, what is the common denominator between between 2 and 4? You can just tell me. 4. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to turn this 1/2 into 2/4. And then I'm going to divide that into pieces that are the size of a fourth. Now over here on my diagram, it's just like saying, okay, 1/2 is the same as 2/4. Okay? If we need to, we're going to change any mixed numbers to improper fractions. We don't have any improper fractions, so for now we can skip that step. My next step is to divide the numerators. So I have 2/4 divided into pieces that are the size of 1/4. Okay? So I'm going to divide my numerators here. And then I have 2 divided by 1 equals 2. Yeah, what question do you have?
So, would another strategy be just like, say, if this was the problem that we were doing, 4/4 would go into one whole 4 times and just divide that in half?
It sounds like you have a really good understanding of your fractions. Absolutely. So that would be a great way to double check your answer. Yeah. All right, let's move down, and we have a second diagram. Notice that this diagram looks a little bit different, just like our models in our warm-up looked a little bit different from you guys. And so we have 2 and 1/4 divided into pieces that are the size of 3/4. So if I have my 2 and 1/4 right here, I have one group of 3/4, a second group of 3/4, and then I can put together all these blue parts right here, and that gives me a third group of 3/4. So I can say that 2 and 1/4 divided by 3/4 is equal to 3. Okay, so we have our picture, we know that our answer is 3. Let's check this using that common denominator method that we learned about. So our first step is to find a common denominator. We already have that, so we can skip that for now. Our second step is to change any mixed numbers to improper fractions. Crew, will you help me out? We have 2 and 1/4. What is that going to be as an improper fraction? You can tell me.
9/4.
9/4, right? Because there's 4/4 in each hole, so we would have 9/4, okay? So we have 9/4, okay, that's equivalent to 2 1/4, divided into pieces that are the size of 3/4, okay? Divide our numerators here, and we have 9 divided by 3, and that is equal to 3. Okay, let's do one more altogether. All right, you guys are going to help me with this one. So we have 3½ divided into pieces that are the size of 5/8. Okay, I'm going to think to myself, 3½ okay, and 5/8 is pretty close to a half. So I'm going to be dividing 3 halves into pieces that are about the size of a half. All right. What is my first step, crew? You can just tell me. Estimate. So I estimated a little bit. So we need 3½.
Find the common denominator.
We're going to use our strategy, our algorithm today. Is that cool with you? Yeah. So let's find a common denominator. What is the common denominator between 2 and 8? You guys can tell me. 8. You got it. So let's take 3½ and we'll multiply our numerator and our denominator by 4, and we end up getting 3 4/8 divided by 5/8. Okay, so step 1 was to get a common denominator. Step 2, what's step 2, guys?
Make mixed numbers to a mixed number.
Yes, do we have some mixed numbers there?
Yes.
Yeah, so what does 3 4/8 become? What is that as our...
28.
So if we do, 3 times 8 is 24, plus 4 would be 28/8. Okay, so we got through steps 1 and 2. What is our next step? What's our next step going to be?
Divide 28 by 5.
Yeah, let's divide 28 by 5. So I have 28 divided by 5. And crew, I can also write 28 divided by 5 using a fraction bar, because that fraction bar means division. So let's go ahead and then write this as a mixed number. So 28/5, we want to write that as a mixed number. So 5 goes into 28 how many times?
5.
Okay. With how much left over?
3/5 left.
With 3/5 left over, and there is our final answer. All right, I'm going to pause the video for you guys to get your note catchers, and then we'll get started right away. So we're on the second page of our fraction division note catcher, and we're going to look at 2/3 divided by 1/6, and we're going to solve this with a diagram, because that, in this instance, would be the more efficient way to solve it rather than using your common denominator strategy, which we'll kind of do with our model. But if we can think about it as a model, that's a really great way as well. So I'm going to start by drawing a diagram of 2/3. I notice you guys are doing this with me. Thank you so much. And I want to split this up into pieces that are the size of 1/6. So in order to do that, I know that I can split up each of my thirds in half. And I can get 6.
I just did a line across. Yeah.
You could do that as well. And so what I basically did is said that, 2/3 is equivalent to 4/6. I just multiplied the numerator and the denominator by 2. I had twice as many pieces, and then total, and then twice as many pieces shaded. Yes?
Are you able to just say 4, or do you have to say 4/6?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Let me do a few things, and then we'll talk about it. So then I want to divide this up into pieces that are the size of 1/6. So I have one group of 1/6, 2 groups of 1/6, 3 groups of 1/6, and 4 groups of 1/6. So the question was, can we just say 6 or is the answer 4 sixths? Our answer is 6 pieces or 6 pieces or 6, depending on what the context of our problem is. 6 pieces, we could say the size of a 6.
Wouldn't it be 4?
Wouldn't it be 4?
Yeah, oh, sorry, you're right. 4. I circled 4 there. The size of 1/6.
I
Okay?
was like so confused.
Yeah, I'm glad you checked that. Yeah, so we have 4 pieces that are the size of 1/6. Yes, Ander?
No, please show me my pencil.
Will you see if someone around you has one to borrow?
I haven't
All
had
right,
it.
perfect. All right, so let's move on to our next one, number 4. And is it number 4 on yours? It's number, I think it's number 2 on yours. I'll fix that. There we go. Okay. And we're going to do this one, and we are going to find our quotient, our answer to a division problem, using common denominators. All right, crew, what was our first step? We got to think back. Common denominators. What's our common denominator? 6, okay? So let's turn 2/3 into 4 sixths. And we'll divide them up into pieces that are the size of 5 sixths. Now our next step is to see if we have any mixed numbers, which we don't. All right. So what is our last or our third step going to be? You're not going to do a diagram for this one. You can check it though if you want to. That's fine. Mila, what are we going to do? Let's divide the numerators. You got it. Okay. We can do that. It seems straight. It's not going to be negative, but it's going to be less than 1. So we have 4 divided by 5, which we can write with our fraction bar as 4 fifths. All right. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of time to try the next 2, and then we'll come back together. So let's go ahead and check out number 3. And we are also going to do this one using a diagram. And we have 5½ divided by 4. So I'm going to start by drawing 5½. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here's a half. So I want to divide this up into pieces that are the size of 4. That's my goal here. So I can see that I have one group of 4. So then I have to figure out how much of my next group of 4 do I have? Well, I have this one bar right here, and this represents 1/4 of 4, right? That bar would be 1/4 of 4. You want to add this in your notes. And then I have this second part right here, this half piece, and this represents 1/8 of 4. Okay? All right. So this first bar with 1/4 of 4, that's 1 out of 4 parts of my sections that I'm dividing it up into. And then this next little part, the 1/8 of 4, 8 of these would fit into the size of the piece that we're dividing up into. So I can say that I have 1, and then I'm going to add 1/4 and 3/8, or 1/4 and 1/8. And those together would be 3/8. So my answer would be 1 and 3/8. Okay? So the thing we have to think about is how much of my next part do I have? Okay, our next question says, find the quotient using common denominators. So I'm looking at number 4, and I can see that we already have common denominators. So step 1 is figured out. What am I going to do for step 2, guys? You can just tell me. Turn our mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I have 3 2/3 What does that become? 11/3. Nice job. And how about 2 1/3? 7/3. Okay. I'm going to divide my numerators. So I have 11 divided by 7 is the same as 11/7. And I know that 7 goes into 11 one time with 4/7 left over. Okay, that's our final answer, yeah. So my next question, well, I'll just circle my answer here. My next question says to use inverse operations and the area model to check my answer to problem 3, okay? So this way, sometimes you'll have multiple strategies, but you can also use your inverse operations to check your answers. So the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So this problem right here, if I have 5½ divided by 4, that's like saying that I have 5½, and if I divide it by 4, then I should get 1 3/8 as my other factor. Okay. Now I'm going to use multiplication to check this, and I'm going to make sure that 4 times 1 3/8 actually does equal 5½. So let me set up my area model. 4 times, it's a little too high. 4 times 1 3/8. I know that 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 3/8, 4/1 times 3/8, is the same as 12/8. 1 4/8, which is the same as 1½ So if I add those two parts together, yeah, I can see that these together are 5½. So I do have the correct answer there. Phew. All right. Now our next one has us also use an area model to check our answer to problem number 4. So in this problem, we said that 3 2/3 divided by 2 1/3 was equal to 1 4/7. Okay, so let's use our inverse operations to make sure this is correct. First of all, we're going to make sure we understand what this means with the model. So I have 3 2/3 as my area, divided by one of my divisors, should equal 1 4/7. So let's use multiplication to make sure that this is actually the case. Okay? So I'm going to multiply my factors together. So 2 times 1/3 multiplied by 1 4/7. That's a 4. Oh, 2 1/3 times 1 4/7. So I'm just checking to see that if I multiply my two factors together, if I do get my original starting value. So 2 times 1 is what, crew? 2. And 1/3 times 1 is what? 1/3. And 2 times 4 is 7. 8/7. 8/7. Can I write that as 1 1/7?
Yeah.
Okay. And how about 1/3 times 4/7?
4/21.
4/21. Now I know that for some of you, this is where your multiplication gets tricky, so we can revisit this. But we have all of our areas. So we have 2 plus 1 and 1/7 plus 1/3 plus 4 21st. Crew, what is our common denominator? 21. Okay, so help me out. 1 and 1/7, how many 21st is that? 1/3, how many 21st is that? 7. And then we have 4 21st. When I was grading your quizzes, the biggest mistake that I noticed is that you guys just didn't add your whole numbers. So we have 3. And then if I add together each of my fractions, 3 plus 7 plus 4, that would be 14 21st, which I can simplify to 2 and 2/3. So that lets me know that I have the correct answer, and I checked it using inverse operations. All right, crew. Nice job.
It's hard. Oh my God, I'm like,
Oh man, I made the same mistake you guys made on your quizzes. You're right. That should be 3 and 2/3.
okay,
Good catch. Good catch. You guys got all your work done, so you have no homework today.
Lucy, that's good for you.
Thank you.